Alright, so today we are going to be talking about solving systems of equations using the elimination method. So make sure you title today's notes and you have the date, which is November 17th. So before we get into systems, I want us to just talk about real quick the idea of elimination. So when you add or subtract quantities to each side of an equation, the resulting equation is equivalent. To the original. So what I mean is when we have something like y minus 7 equals 12, how would you get y by itself? And hopefully you would say you would add 7 to both sides. And then by adding 7 to both sides, you eliminate the 7 on the left. And so you're left with just y equals, and 12 plus 7 is 19. Similarly, or if I gave you 3x minus 5y equals 9 and said start solving for y, you would hopefully tell me the first step is to subtract 3x. And we are subtracting 3x so we can eliminate 3x. And we're left with negative 5y equals 9 minus 3x. Okay, so we can generalize this if I have A equaling B and C equaling D, then I can just add these two together, because I'm basically saying up here 7 equals 7, negative 3x equals 3x, and then I'm combining them. So I can say, okay, well, A plus C equals B plus D. Okay, so this idea is what's going to help us solve systems of equations using the elimination method. So the elimination method So solving a system of equations using the elimination method, you're solving a system by adding or subtracting equations to eliminate a variable. So it's this principle. So we're going to start with an example. Negative 4x minus 2y equals negative 12, and 4x plus 8y equals negative 24. So the first step, I'm going to write a list of steps off on the side. So step number 1 is going to, you're going to ask yourself, is everything lined up? Okay, because you can't use elimination until everything's lined up. So you'll see, okay, our x's are lined up, our y's are lined up, our equal signs are lined up, and our constants are lined up. So since everything is lined up, the next thing we're going to do is choose a variable to eliminate. So we're going to look at our x's and we're going to look at our y's and which one is set up to be eliminated. Hopefully you're thinking, okay, well, the 4x, because we've got a positive 4x and we have a positive 4x and a negative 4x. So if we add these together, they will eliminate. So that brings us to step 3, and we are either going to add or subtract and solve. So we need to look and decide, okay, are we going to add or subtract? So all you're going to do is just look at what you want to eliminate. We've got a negative 4 and a positive 4. So do we add or subtract to eliminate those? Hopefully you are thinking add, because negative 4x plus 4x will give us 0. Negative 2y plus 8y is 6y. And then negative 12 plus negative 24 is negative 36. And now we're just solving for our first variable, which will be y. So the next step is to divide by 6 on both sides, if you want to show that step. And you are left with y equals negative 6 divided by 6 is negative 6. So first variable is going to be negative 6. So now that we've solved, we move on to step 4, which is we're going to substitute the first variable into one equation and solve. So it doesn't actually matter which equation you use, and your first variable isn't always going to be y, it could be x. But what we're going to do, I always recommend substituting it into the first equation. So let's do that. Negative 4x minus 2, and we're going to replace y with this y. Negative 6 equals negative 12. And then we solve algebraically. So first thing, negative 2 times negative 6 is positive 12. Bring everything down. I'm going to move my 12 over, so I'm left with negative 4x equals, and if you like doing this, negative 12 minus 12. And so these cancel, and 12 minus 12 is, oh, sorry, I got rid of a negative sign. Be careful of that. Okay, so negative 12 minus 12 is going to be negative 24. And then we will divide both sides by negative 4. And we're left with x equals negative 24 divided by negative 4 is positive 6. So because this is a system, we need to write our solution as a coordinate point. So the solution is going to be 6, negative 6. Now, one thing you can do is check your work, which you should always do, especially with systems. So because I substituted my y into the first equation, to check my work, I'm going to substitute it into the second equation and see if I get the same thing. So that means I will have 4 times, just 4x plus 8 times negative 6 equals negative 24. Actually, you know, we could substitute both in if we want, so let's do that. So 4 times 6 is 24, 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. And then 24 minus 48 is negative 24. And negative 24 equals negative 24. So we checked and we're right. So our solution is definitely 6, negative 6. So let's do another example. 8x plus y equals negative 16. Negative 3x plus y equals negative 5. So what I'm going to recommend is you pause the video and solve with your group mates. So this problem is a little bit different. You're going to choose, well, everything's lined up. Choosing what you want to eliminate, you should see, okay, I've got 2 y's. So now the question is, do we add or do we subtract? Well, because they're both positive, we could subtract. But you need to be careful when you're subtracting. So 8 minus negative 3 is positive 11x. Y minus y will be 0. And negative 16 minus negative 5 will be negative 1. So then I'm going to divide both sides. Oh, negative 11. Silly me. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 11, and x is going to equal negative 1. Now that I know what x equals, I'm going to substitute it into an equation. I'm going to do the first one, because I always do. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. And then I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Negative 16 plus 8 is negative 8. So my solution, oh, I'm going to write it over here. Why won't you erase? Okay, there we go. So my solution is negative 1, comma, negative 8. Okay, so another way to do this, if you'd like to, which I recommend doing, is make it so you don't have to ever subtract. So 8x plus y equals negative 16, negative 3x plus y equals negative 5. So what we could do is notice, okay, yes, I need to subtract, but instead, why don't you distribute this negative and rewrite it? So I'm going to rewrite my top line just like it was. 8x plus y equals negative 16. So I didn't change anything, these are the same. But now I'm going to distribute, so negative times a negative is a positive, so I've got a positive 3x, a negative y, and a positive 5. Now all I have to do is add these two equations. 8 plus 3 is 11. Y plus negative y is 0. And then negative 16 plus 5 is negative 11. So you'll see it ends up simplifying to be the same thing, but just distributing it will help you from making silly mistakes. So your homework tonight is a worksheet. If you need to rewatch this video, feel free to rewatch this video, but you guys can get started on your homework.